Hello, everyone. So today's lesson is on percentage yield, and this is just a special type of a stoichiometry question. Um, in a lab setting, what would happen is you would go through an experiment like this, okay? And let's say we were collecting the bromine, and then you would want to know how much you made, all right? And then if you want to see how efficient the reaction is, you would also want to figure out the theoretical amount of bromine that you would make. And then by comparing the two, then you would get your percent yield, okay? So in this particular one, this is not a limiting reactant question, although you could see one, all right? I could give you information on both reactants. You'd have to find the number of moles, find which one runs out first, and then do a mole to mole. In this particular case, we don't have to do that because we know this is in excess. So we're going to have leftover of this at the end of the reaction. This is what is going to determine how much of the products we make. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take the 20 grams and I have to convert it to moles. So number of moles, mass divided by molar mass, which is 20 divided by 128.9. And when I do that, I'm going to end up with 0.155 moles. All right. So that means that I already know this starts at 20 grams or 0.155 moles. And at the end of the reaction, I'm going to have nothing left. Okay. Now, I have to do a mole to mole over to this column. So the original ratio is 1 to 3. Instead of 1 mole, I have 0.155. Need to find N. So I'm going to take my 0.155 times 3, and 0.465 moles is what I would make over here. And then I'm going to find the mass. 0.465 times 159.8. And theoretically, I would make 74.307 grams. Now, this is my theoretical yield, okay? What that basically means is that in theory, if the reaction went perfectly, there were no errors, you didn't spill any, you didn't measure out the 20 grams incorrectly, stuff like that, you would make this amount. Now, to figure out the percent yield, okay, the percent yield is going to be your experimental yield divided by your theoretical yield. Now listen to this carefully. Your theoretical yield, I will never give that to you. You're going to have to use Stoich to find that, okay? Now, the experimental yield, if this was an experiment, you would actually figure it out by doing the experiment. You would weigh the product, maybe you have to subtract a couple of masses, but you're going to get that from the experiment. On an assignment, on a test, on the exam, clearly it's not a lab, so I would have to give that to you in the question, and that's up here, okay? Now, I cannot tell you enough. You need to recognize and find it. So in the question, if I talk about percentage yield, all right, and I'm asking you to find the percentage yield for a particular product, you must find the experimental yield in the question. If you give this mass, which it is, right? 47.3 grams is a mass, but if you give it the value of a mass, you're going to automatically, probably, I should say, find the number of moles here. Well, if you find the number of moles in this column and find the number of moles in this column, you're going to get lost because really, what do you do at this point? Okay? Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my 47.3, that's what we actually got in the experiment, divided by my theoretical yield, and then multiply that by 100. Okay? 74.307, and I get 63.7%. It's kind of the same idea. This calculation is easy. This is the same thing that you would do on a test. What the test is out of is, in theory, what you should get on the test, right? If everything went perfectly and you knew everything, you would get that total. But your experimental yield is what you actually got on the experiment or on the test. It's the same idea. So this is how you do all the calculations, okay? Now, please put this down in your note that you would only find the percentage yield for a product. It's a yield. You're producing it. You're never going to find the percentage yield for a reactant. You don't do that because you're using them up, okay? The final thing we'd have to do here is remember that we started with 0, and we are either going to make, now you could say in theory you're going to make this many grams, or you could say 0.465 moles. I have accepted in the past where people put in here the 47.3 grams, which is actually what they did in the experiment. You can put that in there, but this is what I would do. I would just go, in theory, this is how much you would make in those experiments, okay? We don't care anything about water, and like I said, that was already in excess, so we don't worry about that. So that's how you do percentage yield. You should have no problem with these as long as you understand your stoichiometry. So good luck.